to months and even years following our departure. There was nothing that I or anyone else saw that indicated a collapse of this Army and this government in 11 days. Central Command submitted a variety of plans that were briefed and approved by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of Defense, and the President. These plans were coordinated, synchronized, and rehearsed to deal with these various scenarios. One of those contingencies is what we are executing right now. As I said before, there's plenty of time to do AARs and key lessons learned and to delve into these questions with great detail. But right now is not that time. Right now, we have to focus on this mission because we have soldiers at risk. And we also have American citizens and Afghans who supported us for 20 years, also at risk. This is personal, and we're going to get them out. And we in uniform have a deep commitment to this mission. Now, let me give you an operational update. The security situation, as I said, is currently secure at this time. And since 12 August, we've deployed 2 United States Marine battalions, 1 battalion from the Minnesota National Guard. All 3 of those were pre-positioned in theater, CENTCOM AOR, as part of the contingency planning. In addition to that, we alerted, marshaled, and deployed the 82nd Airborne Division headquarters and a brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division consisting of 3 airborne infantry battalions and associated enablers. And finally, there was an infantry battalion from the 10th Mountain Division securing the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. In addition, we are operating on the ground with a variety of special operations forces. That, in combination with our ground forces, we have some of the best soldiers and Marines the world has ever seen. In total, there are 20 U.S. maneuver companies currently on the ground, with about 4,500 troops, and the flow continues. The President has authorized, as you all know, up to 6,000. On top of them is the United States Navy and Air Force. We have multiple squadrons of F-18s, AV-8s, F-16s, AC-130s, B-52s, and MQ-9s. We have a significant amount of rotary wing aviation on the ground, including attack and lift helicopters. In addition, we are working with our allies and partners. There are British infantry rifle companies, along with British Special Forces on the ground working with us. There's also Turkish Security Force, and there are other international special operations forces. This force is capable of extracting a significant amount of people on U.S. Air Force aircraft. Right now, we're averaging about 20 sorties of C-17s every 24 hours. We have the capability to significantly increase that throughput as the Department of State makes evacuees available. As the Secretary said, we've already evacuated approximately 5,000 people, and we intend to increase it. In addition to the military airflow, there's a variety of commercial and charter flights taking out evacuees on behalf of various other countries and NGOs. The military side of the airfield is open, and the civilian side of the airfield is also open. And we intend to keep them both open for military, commercial, and charter flights. One caveat on the civilian side, however, is that the airframes have to come in by visual flight rules only, and a NOTAM has gone out to all the air crews. The State Department is working to rapidly increase the flow of passengers available to get out on the aircraft, and we are fully supporting them with our military personnel at the entrance gates. In this highly dynamic environment, there's a number of unexpected challenges that can and likely will continue to occur, and we rely heavily on the talent, skill, and training of our troops. We've got great people across all the ranks and services out there right now on this mission. In addition to Afghanistan, which is clearly our main effort, we're also conducting humanitarian assistance operations in Haiti in the aftermath of a 7.2 magnitude earthquake with a significant loss of life. And on the West Coast, we're fighting wildfires, and we continue to conduct COVID support and other operations around the world. As we reflect on these difficult and challenging times, every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman who's fought or conducted operation in Afghanistan, almost 800,000, should hold their head high. For more than 20 years, we have prevented an attack on the U.S. homeland. 2,448 lost our lives. 20,722 were wounded in action, and many others suffered the unseen wounds of war. To each of them, I want you to know personally that your service mattered. As the Secretary said, for both he and I, this is personal, and I know it's personal for each and every one of you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to questions. Bob.
Thank you, John. I have a question for each of you gentlemen, if I may. Mr. Secretary, you mentioned the urgency of ramping up the pace of the evacuation. So you have a safe passage agreement with the Taliban, but in fact, in some cases, American citizens, Afghans who are at risk who are being advised to go to the airport are unable to get into the airport because of Taliban checkpoints and so forth. So are you considering other ways that you can get around that problem by, for example, sending forces out beyond the airport to collect people and bring them, escort them into the airport? If I may ask General Milley, with the rapid collapse of the Afghan forces, there's large amounts of weaponry that are kind of out there now that were either surrendered or abandoned by the Afghan forces or otherwise captured by the Taliban. Are there ways you can, are you considering ways that you might destroy some of that equipment to avoid it falling into the Taliban's hands?
Thanks, Bob. In terms of whether or not we intend to send forces outside of the airfield to collect up American citizens or Afghans who are special immigrant visa applicants, the forces that we have are focused on security of the airfield, and you know how important that is, and you know what happens if we lose the ability to provide that security. And so I don't want to detract from that, and we have to make sure that we can not only secure the airfield, but as the chairman said, defend it as well, because there are a number of threats still in the environment. I certainly don't want to do anything to make the airfield less safe, and we won't do that. But we will continue to coordinate, deconflict with the Taliban, and make sure that those people that need to get to the airfield have the right credentials to ensure passage, and the Taliban has been checking those credentials, and if they have them, they have allowed them to pass. So.
And on the equipment, Bob, we obviously have capabilities, but I'd prefer not to discuss any operations other than what we're doing right now in order to get our evacuation out and get that complete. And then there'll be another time when we can discuss future operations.
Barb.
I would like to press both of you on the same points. General Milley, you say in your statement that one of your tasks is to evacuate all American citizens from Afghanistan who desire to leave. There are Americans clearly all over Kabul. There may be Americans in other parts of the country. How can the U.S., the Pentagon, live up to that task of evacuating all Americans? Because we continue to see the violence just outside the airport, and how would you get them around the country unless you go get them?
Well, two things, Barbara. One is State Department, as you know, as I've said, is working with the Taliban to facilitate safe passage of American citizens, U.S. passport holders, to the airport. That's the primary means, and under the current conditions, that's the primary effort. We have capability to do other things if necessary.
Well, can I ask you what that means? Because you also said there were international special forces there that have a capability to extract, and those words suggest very clearly in the military realm you would go get people.
Well, that would be a policy decision, and if directed, we have capabilities that can execute whatever we're directed.
Thank you.
Louis.
And I would draw a distinction, Barb, between extracting someone in an in extremis condition or circumstance versus going out and collecting up large numbers of American citizens.
Do you have the capability to go out and collect Americans?
We don't have the capability to go out and collect up large numbers of people, Barb.
Louis, go ahead.
For both of you, if I could. you have 5,000 U.S. military personnel on the ground securing the area. You have small groups potentially of Taliban fighters outside there who are holding up potentially the second largest NEO that could be undertaken. You have the capability to get there, but how do you get those people inside so that they can actually get on those planes? And both of you have served in major command roles inside Afghanistan. Did you not see the possibility that the Afghan security forces were not up to this fight?
We continue to work with the State Department officials on the ground to improve the procedures, at the entry points to make sure that we can speed up the process of getting people in and move them onward. And so State is deploying more consular officers to be able to help with that. As I stated earlier, we're going to push more military assistance down to the entry points to facilitate these efforts. But we're really working hard to get as many people through as possible. And quite frankly, it's obvious we're not close to where we want to be in terms of getting the numbers through. So we're going to work that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're going to get everyone that we can possibly evacuate it. And I'll do that as long as we possibly can until the clock runs out or we run out of capability.
And also about the Afghan security forces, did you feel that they were ever up to this fight, or did you not see this coming, that they were not up to the fight?
Well, I stood behind this podium and it said that the Afghan security forces had the capacity, and by that I mean they had the training, the size, the capability to defend their country. This comes down to an issue of will and leadership. And no, I did not, nor did anyone else, see a collapse of an army that size in 11 days.
Idris.
Thank you. So if August 31st is the end date, at what point does the military need to start thinking about and carrying out its own retrograde to meet that deadline? And secondly, do you believe or do you regret not starting the evacuation a bit earlier, even by a day or two, to sort of get ahead of the curve?
So that's a great question. At what point do we start thinking about having to retrograde our own capabilities? That's actually the point before we put them in there. We know that we got to have the right mix of capabilities on the ground. We don't want to put excessive materials on the ground that are not relevant to what we're doing, and we have to develop a detailed plan and to retrograde our equipment and our people and synchronize that plan with our efforts to get as many people out as fast as we can, with the time that we have available. So that work is something that we started thinking about very early on, and that's something that we'll continue to think about and develop detailed plans for.
And regretting not starting the evacuation even a few days earlier?
Who's that for, Idris?
Either one.
We make plans for a number of things, and clearly, as the chairman pointed out, as we did detailed planning throughout, we recognize that there might be a point in time when we have to conduct a NEO. So we position all the right forces in theater to be able to do that. We put forces on standby in the United States to support that. And of course, we also were in support of the state-led SIV applicant process throughout. So, in terms of, doing everything that we could at the right time, I think we have been pretty prudent in terms of thinking ahead and planning for contingencies, and we're executing one of those plans right now. So.
Helene?
This question is for both of you, and I'd like for both of you to answer. It seems like, I know we keep harping on the same thing, but it feels like the video is not matching the audio right now. It seems to me like barring a lobotomy by the Taliban, you have 3 pathways ahead of you. One, you can expand the perimeter and establish a corridor into Kabul to get our Afghan allies out. 2, you can extend the August 31st deadline of withdrawing, or 3, you can just leave the tens of thousands of Afghans who've helped us over the past 20 years behind. Which one is it going to be?
Well, first of all, as I said, Helene, we're going to evacuate everybody that we can physically possibly evacuate, and we'll conduct this process for as long as we possibly can. We will continue to deconflict issues with the Taliban, and we will stay focused on securing the airfield. We cannot afford to either not defend that airfield or not have an airfield that's secure, where we have hundreds or thousands of civilians that can access the airfield at will and put our forces at risk.
But that doesn't answer the question. I mean, you're still saying you're focused on the airfield. These people can't get into the airfield.
Well, we're going to do everything we can to continue to try to deconflict and create passageways for them to get to the airfield. I don't have the capability to go out and extend operations currently into Kabul. And where do you take that? I mean, how far can you extend into Kabul? You know, and how long does it take to flow those forces in to be able to do that?
So it sounds like you're saying this depends on diplomacy with the Taliban. That's it. That's our only option, is getting them to agree to do this.
Well, let me add something here, Helene. We got a couple of entry control points set up, a north one, an east one, and a third one at Abbey Gate. They're currently manned with consular officers, Marines. This is all part of the perimeter. Messages have gone out by various means of communication from the State Department to American citizens and others, and they're being told to go to those gates. Right now, we're processing at about, I think the last report was about 120, 130 an hour, something like that, at the north, and about 340, 350 an hour, something like that, at the south gate. So right now, there's a steady flow of people. Now, as that goes on, I think those numbers will continue to grow, and as those messages go out. And I would tell you that for the American citizens, passport holders, the Taliban and the State Department are working out a I got it, but they're working out a facilitation measure. So those numbers are likely to grow. For the others, the State Department is still working through exactly getting the procedures for the evacuees to get to the airfield.
We'll get it, Jen.
Defense Secretary Austin, how many U.S. taxpayer-funded military aircraft have been flown out of the country, and what are you doing to get those back? We've heard of Afghan pilots taking those planes to third countries. And General Milley, you talk about the intelligence reports, and you said there wasn't anything suggesting 11 days that Kabul would fall. But you do mention there were some reports suggesting it could fall apart in weeks. If so, why did you abandon the Bagram airfield? Why did U.S. military pull out, given the uncertainty?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Jen, in terms of the aircraft that have been flown out that you mentioned earlier, I have received reports of a number of aircraft that were flown into Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. Exactly how many, I don't have firm numbers on. In terms of what we're doing about them currently, right now, Jen, we're focused on the airfield and getting people out safely. And so we're going to take that issue up at a later date. And we're going to continue to try to gain greater fidelity on the issue as well.
On your question of Bagram, securing Bagram, you know how big Bagram is. You've been there many times. Securing Bagram is a significant level of military effort and forces, and it would also require external support from the Afghan security forces. Our task, given to us at that time, our task was to protect the embassy, in order for the embassy personnel to continue to function with their consular services and all that. If we were to keep both Bagram and the embassy going, that would be a significant number of military forces that would have exceeded what we had, or stayed the same, or exceeded what we had. So you had to collapse one or the other, and a decision was made, the proposal was made from CENTCOM commander and the commander on the ground, Scotty Miller, to go ahead and collapse Bagram That was all briefed and approved, and we estimated that the risk of going out of Kaya, well, the risk of going out of Bagram about the same. So going out of Kaya was estimated to be the better tactical solution in accordance with the mission set that we're given, and in accordance with getting the troops down to about a 600, 700 number.
Okay, we've got time for two more, and I haven't got to the phones at all, so we'll go to Dan Lamoth from the Washington Post.
Yes, thank you. General, just to follow up on the Bagram versus H-Kaya question. H-Kaya has a single runway with the commercial airport making it much more difficult to defend that runway. We've already seen that this week. Bagram has 2 runways. It would have been a lot easier to protect people once inside. Is there any thought of retaking Bagram in order to expedite this evacuation? And if not, why not?
I won't, good question, great question, but I'm not going to discuss branches and sequels off of our current operation. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, and I think the last one for today will go to you, Court.
General Milley, you keep saying that no one expected a collapse of the Afghan government and military in 11 days, but the reality is the Taliban offensive began weeks ago. They were threatening Kandahar a month ago already. So the question is, if you both think you had such a moral obligation to these Afghans who supported the military and State Department for 20 years, should you have pushed harder when the Taliban offensive began to get these people out, and then the U.S., they may not be in this situation that they're in right now? And then also, if there is this U.S. military-Taliban deconfliction process that's going on right now, have you been asking them to allow the Afghans through, and has the Taliban denied that request? Is that why there's not some effort? The State Department or the embassy put out a statement today saying that that the U.S. couldn't provide any safe passage for these Afghans. Is that because the Taliban won't allow that in these deconfliction?
It's a very dynamic environment, as you would imagine, and of course there have been things that have occurred that we do hear reports of people getting turned away from by checkpoints. We've gone back and tried to and reinforced to the Taliban that if they have credentials, they need to be allowed through, and so that's working better than it was. And quite frankly, we have. The major issue right now is processing the people who are there as fast as we possibly can. It's not a dearth of people, getting there. It's just being able to move the folks that are there through so that we can get them on aircraft. But there have been some unfortunate incidents that I've learned about. And we continue to work to try to deconflict and make sure that there is safe passage for the people that are trying to get to the airport.
Have you asked the Taliban, or has the military asked the Taliban to allow these Afghans through and they've declined?
We continue to work that. Yes, we have. We have gone back and emphasized that people who are trying to get to the airport and have the right credentials need to be allowed through.
Because right now the airport represents safety to a lot of these people. As the Taliban are in Kabul, they're worried that the longer they wait to get there to a secure airport, even if it means they wait there several days to get on a flight. So that's why there's this freneticism to get them through. And then also, if you could also address the question of, should you have pushed harder when it was clear that this Taliban offensive was gaining momentum, a month ago down towards Kandahar and other places?
Well, like I said up front, there's going to be plenty of time for AARs. Right now, focus on the mission, focus on these people getting out, American citizens, the SIVs, others, Afghans at risk. And there's going to be plenty of time to talk about regrets and pushed harder and all these other kinds, intel assessment, et cetera. Plenty of time to do AARs. Right now is not that time.
Thanks, guys. We're going to have to go. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.